I've put together the most valuable lessons that have helped me achieve more out of my life. Hopefully, they're useful for you too. Enjoy. I was just going through all these old files yesterday and I saw a goal that I'd written, which was to make $10,000 a month income. And so it was 13 years ago. And so like, I viscerally remember what that was like. And I know I was in so much pain during that time that I get it. And so like the reason we make this stuff is because I've been there and I don't want that for anybody. You know, like I missed my 20s. Like I didn't have them, as people traditionally say it. You know, like it's weird because in today's like internet culture, like I started my first brick and mortar business, like store front. I was 23. Like I didn't know shit about fuck. Like I knew nothing. And like I didn't know you could hire employees. Like it wasn't a thought. Like I didn't know anything. And so like I cleaned, I did the billing, I did the sales, I taught the sessions. Like I fixed the equipment. Like I did everything because I didn't know you could, and I didn't know, and I didn't have the money, frankly, to afford anything else. And so I get it. Like I get it. But to get out of that, you have to take steps. And the first step is saying that it's my fault. The second step is that you have to use what you have. And so in the beginning, I was reading the self-help books and all this stuff, and none of them really hit for me because a lot of it was like power of positive thinking and like affirmations and like all this stuff. And the reason I make the content I do now, which has now almost become like a shtick, countering that is because it didn't work for me. And I'm not trying to speak to everybody. If that works for you, then like, awesome. Like, awesome. Like people mistake me saying this is what worked for me with this is what I think everyone should do. And it couldn't be further from the truth. I'm saying if what you have been doing hasn't been working, then consider this, which is that like, I remember because I just read this yesterday. The intro in the book, I say, I wish I could tell you that the reason I was able to make it out of the gym was because I was like really passionate about changing people's lives, and I loved fitness, and I loved my clients' faces when they would light up and they'd step on the scale and they'd lose weight, they'd be able to fit in their high school clothes again. It was none of that. It was just the sheer anger that I had at the idea of being wrong and having the people back home be right about everything. And I still can barely tolerate it. And so, I took, in some ways, and this isn't I don't know if woe is me is the right term, but like, I had an otherwise very successful career. Like, I was in a white collar job, and sometimes it's hard, like, hey, I don't know, I haven't been in the other situation, but taking a step down and humbling yourself to minimum wage after you've been in a white collar situation, not easy. And I remember I had clients who walk in and be like, "Oh, did you go to college?" And they were saying that patronizing. And mind you, everyone here, at least at this channel, knows that I don't give a shit. But they were saying it to basically like when I was gonna like write something down, like, am I literate? And in those moments, again, it was like I could be right or be rich. Like I could try and humiliate them back because the pain of what they just said made me feel. They probably didn't even intend that. Or I can be like, yeah, I went to school. I'm very grateful for it. So what are your goals? And I could just move right past it. And so you develop that skin because I had to fucking pay rent. And so, I tell stories about having a kid drawing marker on the wall while I'm trying to close his mom, and he's writing in permanent marker, and I'm trying not to lose my shit over the fact that I'm gonna have to repaint the wall because she doesn't know how to parent a child, but I needed to close the card to pay for the paint. And so it's like I can scold the kid and lose the sale, or I can close the sale and keep my cool and then eventually clean the wall. And so like you only get that stuff by doing it. And so if you're at a place right now where you don't have a lot, you only have one thing, which is time. And so you have lower leverage. So I'm not gonna lie to you and say that there's this one play, this one secret. No, it's sheer brute force. Like you have to will yourself out of it. Like you have to do, it's a huge amount of soul driving energy that you have to do outside of what you normally do. So it's like, you have to live one person's normal life. You have to do your normal work, your normal job. You have to eat, you have to sleep, you have to clean, you have to do whatever else. And then the workday starts. So that is how you eat today, but you're trying to get ahead and you have to eat tomorrow. And so you have to eat the glass so that you can take the pain today, and you're trying to take as much of the pain from tomorrow as you can today so you can get ahead. And like even the concept of getting ahead, I think about this visually, which is like if you have this timeline of life that you can pull towards you, and it's glass in the beginning, and then it's slightly less coarse, and then less coarse, and then it gets neutral, and then it starts to get a little bit sweeter, and a little bit sweeter, and a little bit sweeter. But you have to get through that glass period where you pull it towards you. And I do have this theory that like on a long enough time horizon, if we could live 1,000 years, everyone would eventually be successful. But people wait too long and they die too early. And I say die too early on a long timeline. And so I have to live today and tomorrow and the next day so I can live 3 days at a time so I can get to my second and third life's benefits now. And so that was what, like, I remember the only times that I took off when I was at the gym. And one of the biggest things that I was grateful for with the gyms is that I moved across the country. And so I knew no one. I was in Huntington Beach, I was from Baltimore, like no one. And what would happen, so one of the gifts of that was that once the week was over, so my Saturday sessions were done at like noon, my phone didn't ring. No, like in some ways, very sad, because like no one wanted to see Alex, you know what I mean? Like no one was inviting me out. But I was like, fuck, like I gotta make this work. And so I'd sit there and I'd be like, how do I sell memberships? How do I market? How do I, everything, you know? But that was how I got ahead. And so I tell the stories of like, I remember when I stopped watching the Ravens, and I was from Baltimore, so that was like a tie to home. And so, yeah, it's fresh for me because I just read the story yesterday, but it was tough. I'll catch my breath. So all that to say, the sacrifices that I encourage people to take are not sacrifices I did not make. And I don't say that there's no ways to get there. I'm just saying that this is the way I got there. And if this path works for you, then maybe it works better than what you're doing right now, which is I had a lot of pain. And so I tried to use it. I just used what I had. I was just angry. I didn't want to fail. And so I just kept going. And so there was no there just wasn't another option. And so I think that's what I would encourage people to think about, was like, I didn't allow another option, because the other option was just worse than dying. Because, I mean, I've told this story before and things get hyperbolized. I mean, exaggerated, romanticized, whatever. But like when I had my big consulting job, I was making good money and I had the approval of my peers and all this stuff. And I just didn't want to wake up the next day every day. And it wasn't like I was trying to kill myself, it wasn't that, but every night I would think if I didn't wake up tomorrow, I would be okay with it. And so when I knew that was what I was going back to, if I didn't make this work, I had no plan B. I mean, I had plan B is that I would drive Uber and strip, I joke about that, but that was very much my plan B if I didn't make it work. And I get grilled on social media for saying this because of like fucking race wars, but like there have been slaves for thousands of years. There were slaves in Egyptian times. There were Jews who were slaves. There were Persian slaves. There were white slaves. There were black slaves. Humans have enslaved one another, period. And I like to think of things in extremes because it allows me to think about what's possible. And so the idea that someone else at some other time in history has worked 7 days a week, every hour that they're awake, with the threat not of their own death, but of their children's death, because that's what I would do if I were trying to control somebody. I would take their kids and say, I'll kill them if you don't work. And guess what? They'll probably work. That capacity exists. And so I would think to myself, like, I would try and put myself in that frame so that I wouldn't get into the woe is me. And then just every hour of every day, well, what can I do now? And so it was, I have to learn how to market. I have to learn how to sell. I have to go to these groups where other gym owners are, and I got to learn their stuff. I gotta go to these seminars. I gotta save up so I can learn some stuff. And that's what I did. And so that's how I got out of it.
That visual of life as this like bloody game of tug of war, where like most people, their hands just get too cut to keep holding onto the rope is like it's stuck in my head.
Yeah.
That's really powerful.
It was tough.
It-
So the first 100 grand is the hardest. And I know that that sounds like an unfathomable amount of money. It took me 5 years, like I get it. So like, you just have to save it $1 at a time. That's what it is. Now, obviously I talk about other things like, there are smarter ways to make money, for sure. Like if you can sell expensive stuff, you can just move the decimals. Like, I mean, like the thing is it is factually true. It is spiritually false. And I don't even believe in spirituality in general, but like, it is tough to sell a $10 million building and make $1 million commission or a $500,000 commission when you are broke as fuck. It is like you would have to become a different person, which is why most people's first sale is not that. But is it technically possible? Yes. A lot of people watch YouTube and the internet for complex money-making skills, and they haven't even mastered showing up on time. And so it's like they want to go straight to calculus, but they don't know how to do simple addition. But the thing is that like simple addition is foundational to that. And none of the other stuff will matter unless you can do the basics. But the basics doesn't make them less important. Usually they're the foundation of building, which make them arguably more important. They just are simpler to understand, but not simpler to do. And I think that's the big disconnect a lot of people have, is that they think because they understand something conceptually, that they feel like they have already mastered the skill, which are two very different things. They're somehow surprised when the bill comes due that they pushed off from the past. And so the first lesson of getting out of poverty is 2 words. It's my fault. I have to own that. And I think my fault you can kind of extrapolate to right now. Not like, you basically have to own everything that passed to this moment. So all the pain that I've gone through, all of the Mondays that I've missed, all of the diets that I've skipped, all of the savings I haven't made, all of those are not my dad's fault, my mom's fault, my circumstances' fault, the country I was born in's fault, the zip code, any of those things' fault. It's just mine. And the thing is that people have this belief that because they have a strong argument for why it's something or someone else's fault, that somehow helps them. And it just doesn't. Because whatever you cast blame to is where you also cast power to. And so if I say, I can't succeed because my mom didn't love me, guess who controls me? My mom. And so if you also like replace my mom with a race, a gender, a political party, whatever the thing, like I can't succeed because of Trump's laws. I can't succeed because of the radical left, because of wokeism, because of whatever. You actually give that thing more power in your life than you give yourself. And so it's completely, the thing is that, and this is what's so deceiving about it, is it's very self-fulfilling, is that you get more evidence and then you get more confirmation, you get more evidence, you get more confirmation, and the more your life sucks, the more you're confirmed that you were right. But like, do you want to be right about the fact that your life sucks? Or would you rather, like I think it's an old Zig Ziglar saying, he said you can either be right or you can be rich. And I mean, it's simple, but this is what he was getting at, is that you can say, you know what? You are right. Your dad kicked the shit out of you your whole life and you don't have any confidence because he told you you're a piece of shit every day. You're right. But in order to be rich, you need to let that go. Because every day you say that I'm not successful because of this, it means because this now owns you. And for me personally, that realization that the thing that I hated most in the world, the things that I blamed for why my life wasn't the way it was, I was their bitch. And just realizing that made me angry. But through that anger, I was able to say, well, fuck them. Like, I will succeed despite the fact that my dad said this, or my mom said this, or Barack Obama said this, or Trump said this, or the woke left says what. Despite that, despite the fact that the chips are stacked against me, I will still win.
Why does saying my fault and taking that accountability money?
No, when I was 19 years old, I had to write an essay about depression in an intro to psych class. And I don't talk about my mother very much, but I used to harp a lot. I was an equal opportunity angry person. I was angry at everybody. In other words, I blamed everyone. And so I blamed her for X, Y, and Z. And I remember having to write this essay on depression, and you had to do it from someone else's perspective. And so you had to say, how would the environment and their upbringing, things like that, contribute to the outcomes in their life? And so by writing the essay, true or not, to be clear, about my mother's upbringing and how hard she had as an immigrant coming here, getting beat up as a kid, getting made up for not being able to speak the language, all that kind of stuff. And this was in the fucking 50s. It's when like it was more accepted to beat up foreigners rather than let them in. Anyways, so she had a tough time. And so it made sense. And when I framed it like that, I was like, maybe she's actually a massive success given where she started. And so then I thought to myself, now mind you, I still wasn't over it, but it was in this process that the first thing that happened is when I went back home for fall break or winter break, I remember she said something to me which would normally just like be the beginning of some big fight. You get into these routines. Like I'll say this thing that we both hate and then we'll just get in a nice fight about it. And she said the trigger and I was just like, I understand you. I'm sorry you went through the stuff you went through. And she just like looked completely shocked and then just like started bawling. And so I was like, we're cool. Like you don't anger me anymore. And I think for the most part since then, like that's been more or less the dynamic that shifted. But leading into that was also the idea that all the relationships that I'd had that I'd blamed for not working because of the dynamic that I had with my mother, I was like, I am giving her this power over my love life. Ugh, that's gross. And so I was like, well, I'd rather just say it's on me to change and not have my mom or parents at all involved in my relationships. And so that was me taking, it's her fault that I can't make these things work. I have commitment issues. I don't want to get close to people. I've been hurt before, blah, blah, blah. To like, okay, well, let's take it to the next extreme. Great, you're right. You'll never be close to anyone. You'll never have a relationship that'll last. You're right. Now what? I remember I was at a conference and I had this lady stand up in the crowd and I had just done a thing on like, I don't remember what it was, call it offers. And she stood up and said, let me give you 6 reasons why this isn't gonna work for my business. And so she went down her list and I was like, So I got to the end of the whole thing and she said, and that's why this isn't gonna work for my business. And I was like, you're right, you'll never be able to make this work for your business. And she looked at me like angry and she lashed back. She was like, yes, I will. I'll be able to make this work for my business for this reason, this reason. And so the thing is that like, if the victim frame is just taken to the natural extreme, you realize that you're right, you win the game. And by being right the entire time, you lose everything. And so it's one of these frames that I love. Dr. Keshi says this. He says, you're 99% right, but 100% wrong. And what that means is like, for example, every time I bring a girl home and I want my parents' approval, I bring her home and they say, this isn't the one, she's not good enough, whatever it is, every time. It's easy for them to say that because every single person you date, except for the one you marry, they are right on. And so they're 99% of the time they're right. And they're confirmed by saying that that person that you bring home is not good enough. Because every time, eventually you break up, oh, it's not gonna last. This isn't the one, it keeps going, right? But if you keep doing that all the way to the natural extreme, you're 100% wrong. Because you will be wrong eventually. And it's the same thing as like, I wanna start this business, it's not gonna work. It's not gonna work. The second one won't work, the fifth one won't work, the seventh one won't work. And they're right, but they're just wrong on the long enough time horizon because one of them will fucking work. And one of the girls or one of the guys that you bring home will be the one that you are gonna be with. But it's so much safer for them to be right and right and right. And they get deceived by their short-term rightness, they miss the long-term wrong. And we do this to ourselves too when you're in the victim frame. I don't even like using the victim frame, but when you're in the powerless frame. You give the power away and you get to be right over, that's why it didn't work, this relationship won't work, this job won't work. It's not gonna work this time either. Because you get to be right over and over again. It makes you feel good in the short term, but in the long term, you guarantee the loss.
I think there's also like social reinforcement. We love to complain about the weather.
It's literally the same thing as never investing. Like if you wanna invest your money, right? And you have all this big pile of savings. If you ever invest, there's always the possibility that it goes down in the short term. It's just the nature of markets in general. But if you never invest, you guarantee that you will never get rich over the long haul. And so every day you could make this risk. You take a small risk, but you guarantee a macro win. So you take a small risk today, potential for loss today, for the guarantee over the long haul that it grows and it makes you money. But the flip side is you don't take the small risk of loss today, you take the comfort today for the guarantee that you get the long loss. And so many people flip their life to that same thing, is that they flip the pleasure for today and they just forget the second half of this, which is pain for tomorrow. And that today is also yesterday's tomorrow, and we're living through the pain that you cast, like you own this. And until you're like, this is my fault, I'm in pain today because of decisions that I put off pain for tomorrow, where today is tomorrow. When you're broke, every dollar means so much to you. And you want to see the dollars in your bank account go up. But I never made that my goal. I made the amount of money I made every month my goal, because I saw that as my potential energy versus stored energy. Not to get, whatever, physics people, you get what I'm saying. And so I was willing to take that stored energy and reinvest it to take $5,000 a month in income to make it $6,000 a month. Because I knew that over a year, I was gonna make 12. And so if it cost me 2 to make the 12 in income, I would make that trade every time. And so whenever I'd save up a small nut, now obviously, I've always been pretty good about spending money. I haven't had that habit. So again, foundations, first, it's your fault. Second, spend less than you make. Third, take all of the excess and spend it on making more. Because if you're making minimum wage, I'm gonna say what you probably already know. You're not gonna get ahead. You're not gonna save your way there. You're not. Everyone loves to tell the story of that one girl at McDonald's, but you know they don't tell the other 100 million people who've worked at McDonald's over the world who didn't make it. And the outcome they're talking about is she made $1 million over 40 years of working at McDonald's. You can shoot for more. And so, take the money you make, live on nothing, and the hard part is just swallowing the pride of the fact that in the short term, everyone's going to be right when they say that you're amounting to nothing. And that's the tough part. That's the glass that you have to swallow, that you have to pull towards you. And there's just no other way. You have to learn the skills. Now, to be fair, YouTube didn't exist when I was doing this. And Instagram was a new platform. So all this stuff, the stuff we have today is crazy. The stack of these videos and this podcast, all this stuff didn't exist. I remember when podcasting came out, I was already a business owner. None of this stuff existed. But at the time, I just took all the money I had. And I want to make this point again, is that people think that the money is about buying courses and stuff like that. And you can, there's nothing wrong with that. I've learned a ton from a lot of the stuff that I've bought, to be really honest with you. But I think that I've always had an amazing return on education because I always did it. And I think I always wanted to be the best student in every class, and I was good at school, and I just took business as another type of school. But part of the expenses that come into what you take that money for is experiments that fail. And so one of the things that happens when you're broke is that you bet on stuff and then it doesn't work and people feel like they're back at zero, but you're not back at zero. You're at where you were plus 1 experience, plus 2 experiences, plus 3 experiences, plus 4 experiences. But when you have plus 18 experiences, all of a sudden, boop, you level up 1. You get experience points. There's a reason in video games called experience points. So you didn't trade it for nothing, you got an experience point. And with enough experience points, you get to the next level. And so I think if you just even thought about it like that, it's not a loss, but an experience point. It could bridge the gap between your current income level and the income level that you want to get to. And then guess what? There's more experience points that you have to get there. And those experience points also cost more money. Because when you take a bet in the beginning, and when I say it costs money, it's if you run an ad and it doesn't work, it costs money. If you want to set up a Shopify store or an e-commerce store, and you spend 30, 40, 50 bucks a month, whatever, it costs money. And it does, all of these things cost money to start. Now, mind you, it cost a lot less than it did in the 20s when you had to mortgage your house and guarantee that you'd win or you'd lose everything forever. So the bar hasn't never been lower than it is now, but there still is a bar and you have to get over it. And I still think that the vast majority of the shit that people are trying to get over has nothing to do with the difficulty of business, but the first step, the foundation, which is it is my fault that I am here. And in it being my fault, I am the one who can get me out of it. I say this because I developed all of these things over time. And so if you're starting out, you're not gonna be good. That's why you're new, you have no experience. But there's a difference between, there's a story that, I can't remember where it is, but there was a foreign kid who had never seen a banana before. And so the adult gave the kid a banana. And so the kid took the banana and then bit right into it with the skin and everything. And another child was like, "You're such an idiot." And then the adult yelled at that child and said, "No, he just doesn't know any better." And there's a very big difference between being dumb and being inexperienced. Right now, you just don't have reps. And so you're gonna make a lot of mistakes, like biting into the banana, for just letting someone walk away, assuming it's a close, and they say that they're just gonna come back and call you with their credit card, right? By the way, that never happens, very rarely. But instead, you wanna just peel that banana, you wanna bite into the banana, bite into the orange, all of those mistakes as quickly as possible, and not judge yourself for making the mistake, and see the mistake as part of the process of being like, that didn't work. And if I develop enough of these doesn't works, then you just kind of walk the minefield and you get to where you're trying to go. And people are like, wow, you're so good at this. And you're like, oh, no, I actually just know all the things not to say in a sale. And then they end up buying. I just avoid all that. And then they buy. And to be clear, I think I have a similar piece of advice, but for very different reasons, of telling young men in general, or men, to work harder. And it's not because I think it's some sort of, beating your chest, I'm an alpha, whatever thing. It's just that for me, the point of my life is to become the best version of me. And in order to do that, I need to learn, because there's a huge discrepancy between where I am and where I want to go. And the discrepancy is going to get filled with skills, which means that I need to do repetitions to acquire failures that I can learn from to get better from. And if I can do more of that in a shorter period of time, I will learn more skills, and by definition, I will shrink the distance between myself and my ideal self. And so that is pretty much the only thought process I have around this. And I also believe that you need to be patient with outputs and impatient with inputs. So let me unpack that. Patience in general is figuring out what to do in the meantime. So when someone says, hey, be patient, what they just mean is figure out something else to do in the meantime. And so if I'm telling you to be patient with outputs, it means that you basically just have to figure out something else to do in the meantime while you wait for outputs to occur. Because you can't output, money doesn't appear. You have to do something and then money happens, right? But the doing something part is the thing that you can control. The money happening is the part that you don't control, that comes afterwards. It's an outcome, right? And so when I say patient with outputs, that's the first part. The second part is impatient with inputs. And so if being patient is figuring out what to do in the meantime, impatience is doing the thing in the meantime, right? And so it's the opposite of that. It's the thing you do in the meantime. And so if you want to be impatient with the input is the thing. That's the action you do. And so that process of do a lot of volume, then look at the outcomes that were good, look at the activities that led to those outcomes that are positive, do more of those activities, look at the bottom percentages, look at the things that led to not having that happen, and do less of those. And if you're younger, and this is specific for everyone who's listening to this video, if you're probably sub 30, sub 28, maybe, right? If you're in your 20s or less, you can probably get away with this, which is that people ahead of you are more willing, believe it or not, to feel like they have status. So you can give them status by saying, be a mentor. If you do that, then a lot of people are like, oh, well, he humbled himself. Well, yeah, I'm happy to teach you. And the thing is they'll give you advice that's worth thousands of dollars, years of your life for free, if you just say, you're better than I am at this. But the thing is that at the end of the day, none of it matters, but scoreboard would be the thing that matters in business, right? And so the only thing that precedes the scoreboard is your learning. I've spent ego points, I've spent dollars, I've spent time, I've spent social capital, I spent every resource that I had to get more learning faster. Because fundamentally, the only thing, and I think this is probably one of the biggest gifts my father gave me, is believing that I am the asset I am investing in. And the cool thing is that you are the permanent hold, right? You can't sell you. Like, you're you until you die. And so this is the one asset you've got, because you compound. Skills compound. When you get really good at sales and really good at finance, guess what? You can raise $1 billion, because you know how the finance world works and you know how the sales world works, right? If you know how to code and market, then guess what? You can build software and sell it to gazillions of people because you have the product and the acquisition. Like, skills stack disproportionately. If you only know one, you might not be able to make a tenth as much as if you know two. Now, obviously, those are big bucketed terms that have many, many, many skills underneath of them. But fundamentally, when you think about it that way, you become a weapon. So let's tackle the second part. I said, you can solve a lot of male problems by getting in shape and making money. And so let's talk about the getting in shape side. So you can avoid tons of problems in life by doing one thing: going to bed on time. And so instead of setting alarms to wake up, set alarms to go to sleep on time. It's hard to wake up late when you go to bed at 9, right? And so the thing is that one simple behavior actually can eliminate a lot of the things that derail men, especially young men. And so Charlie Munger talks about this a lot, which is like, all I'd want to do is find out where I'm going to die and never go there. The whole point is he thought so much more about avoiding stupidity than trying to be intelligent. It's kind of like the stupidities are very easy to identify, the intelligence is hard. But if you avoid all stupidity, you just become intelligent by default. And so if you define intelligence the way I do, which is rate of learning, so how quickly you pick things up, that is intelligence. If you can avoid all of these things that make you look like an idiot, right? Then you become more intelligent. And so let's talk about this from the getting in shape perspective. Show me a situation where you have two groups of men. One group of men that is really out of shape and fat, and another group of men that's really in shape that are going to outperform one another, and this is generalized, so you have to take random sampling of the population, a bunch of in shape guys, a bunch of overweight guys, who's going to do better at any task over and over again. If we pick 10 tasks that are completely different, the in shape guys are going to do better than the out of shape guys, period. They're going to have more energy, they're going to be more focused. If it's anything interrelated, like interrelations based, like those guys are going to close higher percentages. If you're better looking, you will close more. If you're better looking, you get paid more. If you're better looking, you get more promoted. If you're better looking, you do better in content. Period. Fight me. And so the thing is like if you have this one thing that affects every way that people see you, and the only thing you have to do is control what you put into your mouth, then don't you think it's worth developing that most basic skill of discipline at this point in your life? Because the thing is that you want to get in shape young, because if you're not in shape, guess whose fault that is? My success can be boiled down to elimination of distractions, getting started, getting better, and never stopping. Here's how to do that. There's 4 steps. When I was young, my father gave me this advice. Rich people buy time. Poor people buy stuff. Ambitious people buy skills. Lazy people buy distraction. I can give you the first and easiest 2025 prediction. Look at what you spend money on, look at your calendar, and wherever you invest is what you will get more of. So many people are surprised when they look at their bank account next year and it's lower than they want it to be. They look at their accomplishments from that year and it's not the things they set out to do. But when you look at their calendar and their credit card expenses, it's very obvious why those things didn't happen. Because we vote with our dollars about the things that we care about. We vote about the type of person that we want to become. And as the first thing that you can do today for next year is actually comment below this video, and I rarely ask for this, the thing that you're actually going to do today. Not what you're going to begin doing next year or what your resolution is going to be, but if it's important enough to do for future you, it's certainly important enough to do for current you, because current you, by the way, is the only you that's ever going to enjoy life. I'll give you this story. So I remember when I was a few years back, I was walking with Layla and we went to Sephora, which is like a makeup store. So we walked inside, I'm sitting, standing there awkwardly because I'm like, I don't know what I'm supposed to do here. There's this lady with the smock who like helps out, and she had these 2 girls who were young. They must have been maybe, about this old. I'm guessing between 9 and 40, who knows. She's leaning over and she has these 2 paintbrushes in her hands and she says, okay, girls, now that you guys are women, you need to start budgeting for this stuff because you're gonna be spending money on this every single month to do your makeup. And so the girls grabbed them, they were super excited, and they went to go check out. And I saw that exchange as actually a really beautiful lesson when it comes to identity. Our priorities we dictate by what we spend, not by what we say. These girls, because they wanted to step into this new identity, had to match it with new priorities. So they had money, or they had saved up their shekels, or whatever they do for chores or babysitting or whatever. By doing that, they had to start prioritizing some of that money towards their new identity from girls to women. But the thing is that many people who want to start next year think, okay, well, I'm just gonna see if this happens. But it doesn't work that way. You have to basically make the decision that this is the type of person that I want to become, and then these are the actions that that type of person would take, and then we align our calendars and our budgets in accordance with that so that the investments we make yield the results that we want. But the thing is that people want to say, hey, wouldn't it be great if I owned Apple, but they never buy the stock? If you want to be that version of you, you need to start buying stock in that today, both by paying in time and paying in money to vote with your dollars about what you truly care about. And the reason that I'm hitting this so hard is that it's never been easier than it is today to be successful. It's also never been easier to be distracted. So along the theme of investing in the things that matter most, the first thing we do is we eliminate all the stuff that sucks. I define commitment as the elimination of alternatives. If you get married, you eliminate all people of whatever sex you're married to that are not that person. Actually, you eliminate everyone who's not that person independent of sex, right? That is a commitment. right? If you enter into a partnership and you say, I'm not going to do any business besides this business as part of the terms, then you've eliminated all alternatives. And so if you want someone to commit, ask them to eliminate everything else that's not the main thing. These are all the things, a laundry list of things that are probably not your main thing that very likely are getting in the way. And these are the most common things that I see in my DMs, that I see in my comments from people who are not getting where they want to go as fast as they'd like to get there. First big category is bad friends. So if you want better friends, get used to seeing them less. Better friends are busy friends. So I remember when I started working more and some of the friends that I had were a little bit more ambitious, I started realizing that the people that I liked the most, I actually didn't spend as much time with, and the people that were always available were the ones that I didn't want to become more like. Here's 5 questions you should consider when thinking about whether to keep a friend in your life or cut them. Question number 1 is, if someone told you that you're a lot like your friend, would you take that as a compliment? Second, are you truly fulfilled by the friendship, or is it just someone to keep you from being lonely? Third, are you able to be unapologetically yourself, or do you feel the need to act differently to please that friend or to be around that friend? Fourth, do you like who this friend is right now today, or do you like the idea of the friend and who they could be someday? And then finally, 5, would you want your future or imagined child to be friends with someone like this person? And I think it's a really wonderful litmus test because it forces you to take a look outside of yourself in order to have perspective from a third-party angle on the true quality of that person. But the reality is that rare people are by definition rare. It's normal to have fewer of them. And so if you only have a few friends or one good friend, then that's normal if you want rare and exceptional friends. If you have many friends, it's far more likely that the bar for your friendship is too low. And to give you a filter that I actually used for the most important friend in my life, Layla, I like to think, does this person have the same scale of goals that I have? So it doesn't mean that they have to have the same goals as you, but it has to be the same level of goals as you, because at least you're going in the same direction. So that's number 1. Number 2 is, do they have the same level of dedication and commitment to those goals? Because I don't know about you, but I had plenty of friends who were like, I want to be an NFL player. I want to be a really rich tech entrepreneur. I want to be a touring musician, right? And they had these goals, but I'm like, dude, I see you just playing Fortnite 4 hours a day and you practice guitar once a week. Like, do you really want that? Or do you just like saying it because it makes you feel good? And so I wanted people who walked the walk, and I wanted people who would keep up with my pace. And if you are someone who's ambitious, and this is me just talking specifically to you because there's only a few people who are watching this who really are, and you'll know that if it's you, you have to get used to being alone. Because there are seasons where you'll basically transition from one group of friends into another. And it's not even a group of friends. You'll usually transition from a group of friends into no friends. And then you'll find 1 or 2 people who are at a new level. And then sometimes those people introduce you to some of their friends. And if you keep walking and you keep outpacing, then that group will then start retiring past you. And then maybe one person stays with you, maybe no one does, and you'll have another lonely period. I'm saying this because I used to think that there was something wrong with me, when in reality, I just didn't understand what the nature of being exceptional meant. And so I'm saying this purely from a definitional perspective. To be exceptional means that you are the exception. It means that you are not normal. And so it's normal for normal people to find you abnormal if you do things that are not normal. Don't let people who have mediocre goals deter you from taking actions that make you great, because it makes you different. And to be clear, whenever I'm trying to get to the next level, I often have to take on things that I don't know how to do. And I have to learn how to do them, which means I have to suck for a period of time. And sucking sucks. But the thing is you have to be able to embrace that period of time and say, like, this is the cost of greatness. And so I'll give you something very tactical. So I have timers in a lot of my offices, and my team has adopted this too, which is I like to time block, which is essentially saying, how long do I think this is going to take? And you can do this on a week scale, you can do it on a daily level, it depends on the level of project you're tackling. But for me, even on the most micro level, I say, okay, how long should this take? I'll then crank this thing, boop, I think this should take 20 minutes, and then I hit start, and I let the timer go. And if for whatever reason something distracts me, I pause it so that I know that I didn't actually work that period of time. And so what happens is it will give you a very real look at how long you're actually working versus how long you think you're working, and you tell other people working, and you Instagram how long you're working. And as I've become more efficient at work, meaning my output per unit of time has gone up, I've realized that there's just been a significant decrease in the distractions that I allow to interrupt me. Again, if you want to stay focused, staying focused is not like zeroing in and saying, I'm going to do it just like, I'm going to just zoom in on this thing. It's more that focus occurs when you remove everything else. What's left is focus. And so Jerry Seinfeld has this famous process that he talks about with writing. And I think writers are also wonderful people for talking to for deep work because it's the nature of the work they do. One of the things that he did, and he has done for years for his stand-up so he can script it out, is that he locks himself in a room that has no windows and it has nothing but a yellow notepad and a pen. And he tells himself that he has to go in that room and he doesn't have to write, but he can't do anything else. And so what ends up happening is that writing occurs as a default. And so focus kind of works the same way. You eliminate everything else to create focus. You don't try and push harder while also having these disruptions. So there's 3 easy ways that I make my phone less distracting. The first is I switch it to grayscale. And so grayscale decreases consumption across all people by 30%-ish, and that's research backed, which is pretty cool. The second thing is turning off all notifications across all apps on your phone, because you never want your app to be dictating when it's convenient for the app to disrupt you. Like, how ridiculous is that? But we let apps have that permission. Most phones and people want to push notifications to you. I want to pull them when it's convenient for me. The third thing is other people. And so I have a mode on my phone where no one can get through. And when I do that, then I can reach out to them when it's convenient for me. Because if it's actually an emergency, call 911. And if it's not a true emergency, then it can wait. And my team wanted to remind me that I don't email. I heard in, I think it was like 2016, that Bill Clinton didn't use email. And I was like, if he's the president and he doesn't use email, I cannot use email. And so my team doesn't contact me via email. And so if you can eliminate entire channels, that's also an easier way to concentrate fewer flows of communication. And here's the thing, it's always harder, takes longer, and costs more than you think it will. That is a reflection of poor expectations, not that reality is bad. And so it makes sense that it would be harder, take longer, and cost more. Because if it didn't, then everyone would have it. And if everyone had it, then it wouldn't be worthwhile. And so literally the difficulty of the task that you embark on is proportional to the reward that you ultimately get, because you are the asset that you build more than the achievement. And so if it's hard, that's amazing, because it will make you that much harder once you conquer it. And it will also make it harder for anybody else who wants to follow in your footsteps. And so the higher up the mountain you climb, the thinner the air gets, and the rarer the climber or explorer must be in order to get there. And so I don't know about you, but I would so much rather climb a mountain that so few people have been able to climb so that I can see a view that other people haven't seen. And so speaking of expectations, let me talk about the worst expectation of all, which is entitlement, which is the expectation of life or other people to give you something without earning it. And I think that this is a virus in today's culture right now. And so there's the famous quote, hard times create strong men create good times create weak men, and weak men create hard times. It makes sense that right now we have a lot of weak men because it's been pretty good times. The good news about that is that it's so easy to beat them. You just have to show up, be on time, prepare the night before, remember people's names, actually follow up when you say you were going to, and try like you mean it, rather than trying like you want to get credit for trying. And I see this is this thing that's pervasive right now, is that people will comment or they'll DM me and they're like, hey, I'm trying really hard, as though I'm supposed to give them credit for trying. The world doesn't work that way. It gives you credit for achieving. And the reason that you want credit for trying is because you want it to cost less, take shorter time period, and be easier. And so if you restate your complaint about the difficulty as, oh, I have false expectations about the ease or the price tag of this goal, then all of a sudden you realize that the only real problem was that you expected it to cost less. It's like going to the store and being like, oh, I've got these Jordans that I really want to buy. I got $50. I'm so excited to buy them. You go to the store and see that they're $300. At that point, you can just say, Jordans aren't for me. Or you can say, oh, I will have to keep working and keep saving so that I can afford this. And so it's a lot about affording the goals. That he wasn't smart enough to understand how to become a doctor, or is it that he just had other skills that he lacked along the way? And so a lot of people right now are judging the fact that they didn't succeed because they somehow think it's some innate trait. I'm not smart enough, I'm not good enough. But sometimes you just lack some prerequisite skills, right? Like if you're like trying to learn calculus and you've never done arithmetic before, it's gonna be really hard, right? Dare I say, impossible. And so if you jump straight into calculus, you're not gonna win. So sometimes you have to take 2 steps back in order to build the foundation to get forward. Now, I'm gonna keep the story going. So he then graduates in 7 years, because how long it takes. The actual medical school system is different in Europe. They actually do college and the next degree all as one thing. So 7 years later, he graduates. Okay, then he's this Iranian dude, can't go back to his own country, meets a girl in Belgium. She says, I'm from the US. And so he comes back to the US with the lady who would eventually become my mother. And when he's in the US, his doctor, his MD, doesn't apply here. So he then has to basically do it again in the United States. And in order to do this, you have to get a residency. Now, getting a residency as someone who's a foreigner back then was pretty tough. And so it took him 2 years where he had to basically work minimum wage jobs. He was like, he had to like run slides, like radiology slides back and forth as like a runner, a courier, when he was a full surgeon. But he couldn't do it here in the US. And so imagine how emasculating it is, right? Where your wife comes back, she was a US citizen and had all this other stuff, right? And she got her internship immediately because she was US and she was a girl, whatever. And my father didn't. And so he then had to do 2 more years where he didn't have progress. So he told me this whole story, and then eventually, obviously, he got the residency, and then he was able to get in the path. But if you look at that, he basically had 4 or 5 years of his life where there was basically no net gain in progress towards his goals. And so he's telling me this story when he's 50, and he's like, look at my life now. He's like, no one knows. He's like, no one asks me how long it took. They just know what I have now and what I can do now. And so you have this idea that it should take a certain period of time. It should only last this long. It should be this level of difficulty. But the thing is that level of perseverance, when he decided to go out on his own and start his own practice rather than and left the practice that he was working in, he then didn't know anyone. And he still had a heavy accent, was a new guy in a new area, and it took him time to build up. And what did he do? My dad learned how to be a general contractor. He built his own surgical center because he couldn't afford having these outsourced third parties that charged $250,000 to build a surgery center. He built his for a fraction of that. And so it was my dad going to Home Depot, measuring and figuring these things out as a full plastic surgeon. It's not about the resources you have. It's about how resourceful you're willing to be. Right now, getting started is 100% under your control. And I love taking this frame, which is that every self-made billionaire is self-made. Now, if you're like, wait, there are billionaires who aren't self-made. Right, that's why I didn't say all billionaires. Every self-made billionaire is self-made. And every self-made millionaire is self-made. And here's the one people hate. Every self-made person in poverty is self-made. Now, that may make you feel uncomfortable. And you know what? You may be right. You probably did have more disadvantages. You probably did have things that worked against you. And now what? You're right. So that's it then for you. The rest of your life will never go the way you want it to go. The harsh truth here is, if you want to feel better, blame others. If you want to get better, blame yourself. And so my father told me that story multiple times in my life, as I'm sure your fathers have told you stories multiple times in your life, where you had a parent or an uncle or a brother, and they told you those big, meaningful stories. And so I'll tell you another time he told me. So after I lost everything for the second time, think about, like, I tell the story, but it's very easy to gloss over. But think about this. I had left my job, went to a new area, didn't know anyone, started a gym, didn't have enough money to have an apartment, slept at my gym, just grassroots got it going, made the gym successful by working there every hour of the day, was finally successful enough to be able to open a second location, a third, a fourth, a fifth, a sixth, finally feel like I tasted success, like I'm actually doing something, I'm actually pretty good here, like that bet that I made actually paid off. And then I lose it all. And so I sell all those locations, I put the money in a new thing, and then it's gone. And so I could look back and say, wow, I just spent all those years and I actually have nothing to show for it. The only thing I would have had to show was the money that I made. But my father retold me that story, and he said it was never about the amount of failures he had. It was about the education that he had. And so one of the other repeated fatherisms that he gave me was that education is the only thing that no one can take from you. The skills you have, the skills you acquire along the way are the only thing that are truly yours. There's nothing else in this world that actually belongs to you. Your clothes can get stolen, the belongings you have. And he said this from a place of reality, which is my family came from a country that took all of our assets. They seized everything. They seized land, they seized homes, they seized wealth. They just said, oh yeah, all that's ours now. Good luck. This may not be as real for people in the United States, but having people who everyone in my family had everything taken from them, that is very evident in how they talk to me and how I've always seen the world as these things are ephemeral. These material goods, the studio, the setup, the lights, the whatever, the platforms, like gone. But the thing is that my father came here with $1,000 because of the revolution and had nothing and built the life he has. And you can lose it all and gain it back. And so we've seen so many entrepreneurs who've actually lived through this cycle. It's actually a common thing in entrepreneurship. And it's because you have to understand and respect risk. The beauty of it is that after you fail, the likelihood that you're successful goes up, not down. This is the part that people miss. They fail and think it somehow decreases the likelihood of success, but it actually increases it. And so it's like you want to just get the failures out of the way. Why would you not want something that increases the likelihood to hit your goal? And the reason that it increases that likelihood is that failure is a requisite probability for taking action. And so anyone who has failed has taken more action than someone who's done nothing, which means it increases the likelihood that they are successful. And so when you fail, you get feedback. And when you get feedback, you get better. And when you get better, it increases the likelihood you win. Losers stay losers by never being willing to lose. Everyone loses before they win. And so even the one, or the person who was going to become the one, was somebody who had to fail first. And I love that because everyone falls the first time. Your first business is very unlikely to be your last business. The first product you have will be a product that you will be embarrassed of years from now. But what's important is having the product, getting the product, building the product, launching the product, shooting the shot. And so if you're never willing to lose, you're never going to win. So in 2025, if you start a podcast, you start making content, you start doing cold outbound, or you take a new job, whatever it is, just remember that your second try after you fail, which you inevitably will, takes twice the emotional effort, but half the actual effort. So you'll fail and you'll emotionally feel bad, but guess what you did? You actually gripped your hands on the unknown, and you go from unknown optimism to known pessimism. So it's like, okay, now I know what it takes. I now have realistic expectations of what is required in order to be successful. And although it may be bigger than I originally thought, I now can quantify what is required to win. And so here's the thing, the best entrepreneurs in the world have the biggest failure resumes. And so I don't even want you to win. I want you to build your failure resume. And so if you're like, oh, it must be easy for you to say, I lost money on my first 2 real estate deals I ever did. Almost lost all the money I put in. I've lost money on crypto when I put it in years ago. I lost money on bad hires. I've lost millions in bad hires. Actual hard costs, not soft costs. I've had 6 failed businesses. I've had 9 failed partnerships. And so I bring these things up because you're not gonna hit it out of the park on the first shot. But the crazy thing about how success works is that you only need to win once. That's the crazy part, is you only have to win once. I'll read you this quote from Jeff Bezos, which is what I started my first book, $100 Million Offers, with. We all know that if you swing for the fences, you're gonna strike out a lot, but you're also gonna hit some home runs. The difference between baseball and business, however, is that baseball has a truncated outcome distribution. When you swing, no matter how well you connect with the ball, the most runs you can hit is 4. In business, every once in a while, when you step up to the plate, you can score 1,000 runs. This long-tail distribution of returns is why it's important to be bold. Big winners pay for so many experiments. And when he says big winners pay, they pay in failures. They pay in the scars that they have to incur and endure along to hitting it out of the park and hitting it out so big that they never have to swing again. And so I want to make this as real as I possibly can. I just found an old note from myself to myself that's 12 years old. Closest approximation to buying time. And so there's this big thing like you can't buy time. False. You can buy the future at a discount. And you buy the future at a discount by buying the skills required in order to get there faster. And so if it could take you 5 years if you did it on your own, or it could take you 1 year if you paid 4 different people to help you out with each step of the process, why would you not want to pay all of the money you have to get to there and then have 4 years of gain with that new baseline? You now are living 4 years, 5 years into the future. It's like you skipping from being 20 to 25 and you getting the earning power at 25 plus, but now you're just 21. And then when you're at that point, you pull the next 5 years forward. And when you're 22, it's like living like you're 30, right? Like now at that point though, you might spend all your savings yet again. And this process has been one that I have consistently done for the entirety of my career. And it just gets to a point where you can't even spend the money. And so my very controversial advice is spend all your money on education for as long as you possibly can until you can't even spend the money because you're making too much of it. And so how do you become an expert? You do more repetitions than anyone else in a narrow field, which also means you fail more times than anyone else in a narrow field. And so if you want to beat someone, just try 10 times harder than them. And you only really need to try 2 or 3 times harder, but you probably don't realize how much harder they're trying than you are. So try 10 times harder just to make sure you win. People reject this idea that someone can work 10 times or 100 times harder, but I define work as output. And so for you to say that someone can't produce 10 times more than you is just factually false. There's tons of people who produce 10 times more. There's tons of people who produce 100 times more than you. I'll give you the easiest example in the world. A lot of departments run on weekly cadences. They say, do this thing by end of week. Oftentimes, you can ask that person, how many hours will this really take you? And then that person will say something like, I don't know, 3 or 4 hours. You say, okay, well, why don't you just get it done by noon? And then at noon, you say, okay, what's the next thing gonna take? And they'd say, probably another 3 or 4 hours. You say, cool, get it done by the end of the day. Now from those 2 cycles, that would have normally taken 2 weeks or 14 days, but instead it got done in 1. And so just right there, you got something done. You got 14 times more done than the competitor who's doing things on a weekly basis. And so this is how you drag the future to the present, is that you're not focusing on how hard you're working, you're focusing on how much you're getting done. You'd be amazed at how much better you get after you've done it 100 times. If you want to win, do it again. I want to be clear. You don't just post 100 videos in a row and see what happens. You post one, see what worked, and then try and do more of that thing. And so the idea isn't just raw effort. It's raw effort with an improvement loop. And so I remember one of my favorite words that I have to teach sales guys, because it's a very repetitive task to teach someone how to sell, is great, do it again. Great, again. Great job, again. And so it's that repetition that breeds the nuance of skill. And you want it to be so drilled into you that you no longer have to consciously think about how to do the thing, because you can then do it as a natural skill so that you can move on to putting your attention to the next skill. So it's not just about learning how to do it once, it's about learning how to do it so many times that you don't have to think about doing it at all. Especially if you're starting out, your goal should not be passive income, mainly because you don't have enough money for the passive income to mean anything. Instead, you should learn how to make money while you're awake before trying to learn how to make it while you sleep. You crawl, then you walk, then you run. Once you have more money than you can possibly reinvest in education and acquiring more skills, then you can take the leftover and put that into your passive income pool. And so very, very tactically, this is what I'll walk you through. You should have an education investment budget. And so just like you spend X dollars per month, so let's say we pull all of your expenses down and you're making an extra $1,000 a month. Okay, now if you're not eating out, you're not buying new clothes, you're not going out with the boys, you're not spending money in stupid ways, if that's what you're doing.
That was her whole thing. And I was like, do you think it'd be possible for you to help people and to make money? And she was like, well, yeah. And I was like, okay, do you think you could help more people if you made more money? And she was like, yeah. And in that conversation, she shifted from being what I would consider a bleeding heart of just like doing everything, like just trying to just help every single person. But the thing is your resources are so limited. You can't do much. And so if you want to help a lot of people, it's like you got to learn the game. And the thing is, to win that game, it's like you probably have to outwork people, a lot of people, and you have to be called names by people who live lives that you don't like. I want to be very clear about this. When I say work hard and smart, it doesn't mean it's going to be exciting. So 12 here is accept boredom. Like if you want to be creative, you must first learn to be bored. If you want to achieve a goal, you'll either have to accept boredom or pain. And the bigger the goal, the more of both you're going to get. I have this great visual in my head about how winning works, right? And so you imagine you have this marathon, right, that you're running. So you've got the starting line here, right, start. And then you've got this big race, right? And then you've got a finish line over here, ta-da, finish. Now, when you've seen a race, where do people gather? They gather here and they gather here. So here's the question. Where does the winning happen on your own? Because no one cheers for you not drinking for a day, or not smoking, on a long drive if you're trying to quit, or not overeating for one night, or skipping out on going to the club with the boys. No one cheers for that. No workout or meal is ever impressive on its own. And so the reason so few people understand success, or at least achieve it, in my opinion, is that consistency never looks impressive in the moment, only at the end. Because if you think about how consistent, like, it's very difficult to visualize consistency because you can only see someone do something once, right? You see a snapshot of someone take a shot or hit a backhand. The only way that you can actually witness consistency is working with people who are consistent, because the thing that you have to see is that person show up every single day. Like, someone could show a workout of me working out and someone else might be like, okay, well, I mean, that's a workout. Maybe I should kind of work out like that. And sure, there's a level of intensity that might be there, or form and things like that, whatever. But the thing that people won't see is it's very hard to witness 20 years because you have to be there for 20 years. And this is why I think so few people are able to internalize consistency, which is the most important success trait, because it's very hard to lose if you show up every day. It's very hard. And showing up every day is boring. And so if we're willing to accept boredom, the next thing that we're gonna have to be willing to accept is sacrifice. We have to give up some things to get others. And so, like, at the end of the day, like, all we have are trade-offs. We have what we have and what we want. And the question is, what are the things that you currently have are you willing to trade for the things you want? And I think it's such a perfect way of thinking about it. Like, you have everything in your life right now that you're going to have to trade. Like, everyone trades. Everyone starts even when you had at zero. You have things in your life and you have to trade those things for things that you currently want but don't have. There's no perfect way to live your 20s or your 30s, right? You either live them up and become an underskilled 30 or 40-year-old, or you work them up and become an underlived 30 or 40-year-old. You just have to figure out which you'd rather be and accept the trade-offs and know that there are no do-overs. And that's okay. And when we're really thinking about sacrifice, right now, no human will ever get more than 24 hours per day. We all have that, right? And so fundamentally, everything that you spend your time on that is not you pursuing your goal, you are determining is more important than your goal. And so if you look at what you did every single one of these hours, and then you actually surface it and say, you know what, watching Netflix, doom scrolling TikTok and Instagram, hanging around, doing nothing, surfing the web, or whatever it is that people do these days, that is what's actually more important to you based on your behavior. And so is it really a sacrifice to give that up for what you want? Because the thing is that a year from now, you're not gonna look back on today and be like, man, I'm so glad, like, those clips that I watched really changed things for me. You probably won't even remember any of the clips that you saw. They did a great research study on this where they did short form versus long form even, and people remember like 11%. Like 24 hours later. It was a tiny percentage. And so we have to accept that the things that we spending our time on, most of the time is just wasting our time on. And so I think Seneca said this, it's not that we don't have enough time, it's that we waste the time we have. I come back to this, which is like, is it really a sacrifice? Or are you finally just saying, I believe this is my priority, and therefore all of these things that are not helping me pursue that, I'm now going to trade out for things that will help me get this priority. That's it. And to me, if you like what you're gonna get, why would you not make the trade? And so I had this clip that went super viral from a podcast that I did yesterday. And the host asked me if all my books and all my tweets and all my emails and all my YouTube videos were all deleted and I had to compress all of my stuff into 60 seconds, what would I say for somebody who's in their 20s and 30s? This is what I said. Figure out what you want, ignore the opinions of others, and do so much volume that it would be unreasonable to not be successful.